Right, hello everybody, welcome back to our conversion to video of Dr. Dave Regis's chess tactics in the opening. And the previous two videos we'd seen 12 games in the Pirc Modern, going to see 6 more here. And if you hadn't seen us before, the Pirc Modern is black playing pawn here, knight here, bishop here, in some order. And at the minute we're looking for Dr. Dave's recommendations for players with the white pieces. So we're seeing black get a few thrashings so far. That will turn around in the second half of the book. But for now, let's expect to see some miniatures where white gets the best of things. Of course, the Pirc Modern's perfectly playable, but yeah, let's see where we go. So our first game, we are in Canberra in 2001, Lane against Riley. I don't know Riley, but G Lane, that's probably Gary Lane, who I think is an English master player. I'm not sure if he's a grandmaster or an international master, but the name definitely rings a bell. I think he's written a few books over the years. And this is the system that Dr. Dave seems to recommend. There's lots of other systems against the Pirc Modern, like F4, and then not knight there, that's cheating, knight F3, things like that. But this seems to be the one that's in most of these games. And knight F3 and castles, and queen to D2 early. So we've seen a lot of games where H3 is played to stop anything getting to this square, but not in this one. Queen D2, and sure enough, black leaps in to try and swap off this bishop. White's having none of it, bishop to G5, F6 from black to kick it away, and white, determined to keep hold of it, doesn't go back to E3, plays bishop H4, knight C6 from black, H3, knight H6 to get the knight out of the way. There's now a gap on F7, a convenient square to put it. Excuse me, I lost my place there. Yes, castles queenside, knight to F7, and just a nasty little possibility here, of course, of bishop to this square, winning the queen. So white gets the king out of the way. Black plays bishop H6 anyway, queen to E1 from white, bishop to D7, and bishop to C4, pinning the knight, but okay, it's a natural developing move anyway. And then E5. And yeah, the bar has shot up to +2.5 here. In fact, +3 in a bit now. Oh, no, it's changed its mind. Anyway, it's a decent advantage to white. And why? Well, there's a bit of a tactical trick going on here. The pawn on F6 is actually pinned. So although it looks like this square is all lovely and defended, actually not so much. And the game continued with takes, and then simply bishop takes here. And if you play queen takes bishop, you get rook takes bishop, and not only is white a clear pawn up, but black's got an isolated pawn here in the middle of the board, and is probably really annoyed as well that they've lost a pawn. This rook is nasty, threatening things over here, and black just yeah, resigned at this point in that game. It's +4, can't say I blame them. So okay, let's move on to our second game of the 6 today, and we're in Rotterdam in 2002. I'm not completely sure with the pronunciation here, but De Vroijkt as white and Voets as black, and a 14-move game. So let's see how this one goes. So E4, D6, D4, knight F6, knight to C3 and G6, bishop to E3, bishop to G7, queen to D2 early again, C6 from black, and straight away bishop H6 from white. We've seen this theme in the other videos a few times. Black castles, and H4 from white. We've seen this theme in the other videos a few times. Queen A5, and straight in with H5. No messing around here. White's quite happy to get rid of this pawn to allow the rook access to the black king. Bishop takes from black, queen takes from white. So this is now starting to look more than a little bit nasty on the H file, and the computer confirms that, +2 and a bit. G5 from black. There's no way black's going to let this pawn get swapped off. It's just would be crazy. E5 from white, attacking the knight. Knight to E4, which we can do. You can't play knight takes knight because of the pin. But although you can do it, it's now +6, so you can see things are going a little bit wrong here. And this is because bishop to D3 now pins this knight. If you play knight takes knight, you're getting mated on H7. Ouch. So what's played at this point? F5, trying to block the diagonal, but bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, and queen takes g5, and king to f7. And what's going on here? What's the winning move? What's the next move after which black resigns the game? Have a little go if you wish to at finding this move. It's a nice little tactic. Should be simple enough to spot, so hit pause if you want to. Otherwise, I will play the move on the board in 3, 2, and 1. And we've got the queens lined up here horizontally along the board. So hopefully you spotted that. E6 check. Black has to deal with the check. And then queen takes queen. It's just obviously winning the game. Okay, I should, by the way, just go back a few moves here. I mean, at this point, after h4, we just put the lines on. In actual fact, it's not over by any means. The computer's saying tiny advantage white, but nothing too dramatic. Let's go back here in this position as well. Slight advantage white, nothing too dramatic. Yeah, so the opening itself is quite playable for black. It's just, you know, we're seeing examples of where white gets the upper hand. Okay, next game. Let's turn my page over. We've got 4 to go. And we are in Regionalliga in Bayern in Germany, 2003. We've got Redzepovic and Kaper. So here we go. E4, D6, D4, knight F6, knight C3, G6, bishop E3, bishop G7, and F3, another possible move, another way to guard this square, so nothing can jump in there, and potentially it gives you a way to launch a pawn storm on that side of the board, so fine. C6, queen to D2, knight B to D7, all very, very level and fine at the minute, and sure enough, G4, yeah, here comes the pawn storm. Queen to A5, black is likely to do the same sort of thing on this side as white's going to do on this side. Sure enough, H4. H5 is a common theme against this, to just block the pawn storm before it gets anywhere. G5 is played, and the knight has to retreat somewhere. G8's where it goes. So computer's saying slight advantage again to white, but nothing over the top. F4 played, E6 played, castles from white, knight to E7, king to B1. That will allow this knight to move in a minute. Otherwise, you couldn't have moved previously because the pawn would have gone. And B5. And Dr. Dave now writes, black missed the point of white's last move. And the penalty for that is 2 pawns. Yeah, if you look at this point, the position is, you know, basically level. After B5, we're looking at a massive advantage to white. So press pause now if you want to try and find the sequence that ends the game. Otherwise, if you're happy just to carry on, I will play the next move in 3, 2, and 1. And the next move is knight takes pawn. So what's going on here? Well, you can't just play pawn takes knight because the queen's undefended, so that's no good. If you try queen takes queen, which is what happened in the game, you get another move from white before he recaptures the queen. You get knight takes pawn check. You have to do something to get out the checks, just say king f8, and now white recaptures. Actually, he doesn't do it that way because that would drop a pawn. Now white recaptures, and white's just clear 2 pawns up and winning comfortably. However, as I say, just bear in mind that at this point in the game, it's pretty level chances, computers saying pretty balanced. So again, not the opening so much as just a mistake on the part of one of the players. Okay, let's get a new board up, and we've got, where are we here? An under 14s, the Ukrainian under 14s championship. Dr. Dave strikes again with his incredible research, and we have Yaremko against Kravchenko, and this one ends in 14 moves. So let's see what happens. E4, D6, D4, knight F6, knight C3, G6, bishop to E3, bishop to G7, and F3. c6. This is all very normal stuff. Queen to d2, b5. You'll know when something goes wrong because this will sort of jump or fall significantly. Castles from white. This is an ongoing theme in what Dr. Dave is recommending, castling queenside. Queen to a5, all very similar to what we saw in the previous game. King to b1, and now b4. So this knight has to go somewhere. That's the whole point of king b1, as it still lends some support to that square. Knight c to e2, knight b to d7, and you know the game is level really. It's difficult to imagine that one side or the other is going to be resigning in 5 moves time, isn't it? Rook c1, not quite sure of the point of that, but it's still basically level. Yeah, strange move that. Maybe white wants to play the c pawn forward, who knows? Castles from black, and now the pawn storm comes, h4. But slight advantage black, basically level, nothing to write home about. Rook b8 from black, and here comes h5. And I have, you know, maybe black should have played h5 himself to stop this happening, but here is what it is. Knight takes, bishop to h6, this, not that, this thematic idea of getting rid of the dark square bishop, which weakens these dark squares around the black king. Black doesn't take, black plays e5, and yep, up goes the bar. e5 is obviously a big mistake, and Dr. Dave's comment, the h-file attack yields a simple win. And part of the problem here is this pawn has cut off the queen from getting back to this side of the board. So if you want to find the next move for white that basically ends the game, obviously press pause now. Otherwise, I'm carrying on in 3, 2, and 1. And yeah, the correct move is rook takes knight, because if you take back, and if you don't take back, you're just losing material. You then run into queen g5, and there's no way to defend this bishop. It's completely pinned. There is no way to defend it, and checkmate is unavoidable within the next 2 or 3 moves. Ouch. Yeah, however, you always have to just bear in mind, again, just remember that at this point, before black plays e5, black is absolutely fine and the game is level, or level chances, says the computer. Yeah, so, okay. 2 more to go. And we are in Shonitsi. I don't know where that is at all. That's got me completely. It's 2005, and Sharnik against Shmaikovsky. Yeah. Not sure about my pronunciation with some of these names, but never mind. Right, now we get to our same position with a slightly strange move order this time. And we have a D pawn opening. Now remember, Dr. Dave is always recommending the E pawn, but we get to the same opening via a different route, because now knight c3, g6, e4, d6, and bishop e3. So we are back to our main line of the Pirc defense. Bishop g7, f3, c6, queen d2, knight b d7, g4, white goes straight for the pawn storm, counter strike in the center from black with e5. What are we at the minute? Still relatively level, maybe a slight advantage to white. Castles from white, castles from black, pawn takes, and h4. So slight advantage to white, presumably because the white pawn storm is a bit further advanced. The black pawns still haven't got off the mark, but you couldn't say that the game is over, particularly at this point. Black's 10th move is very thematic. Often you will do this against the pawn storm to stop the h-pawn advancing. And then if pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, and you use the knight almost as a blocker to stop the h-pawn advancing. So fine. Black plays g5, knight to h7, bishop c4, queen to a5. Position still pretty level up until this point. After queen a5, it all goes a bit wrong. We're now looking at +4. Queen d6 from white, rook to e8, and white grabs a pawn. How? What can white do here? It's a fairly simple tactic, but obviously black overlooked it in the actual game and actually resigned after white's next move. If you want to just find white's next move, hit pause now. Otherwise, I'll play it on the board in 3, 2, 1. And the point is that the bishop has pinned this pawn. So white simply played queen takes g6 and is going to win this pawn any second as well, because there's no way to defend it. And black resigns because they're going to be 2 pawns down with a horrible attack heading up this side of the board. Just to point out, after bishop c4 in this position here, computer is saying plus 0.4. So basically a level game. Same old thing, same old story. Nothing wrong with the Pirc Modern, but it only takes one slip and you can get into some awful trouble in chess. All right, last one. And we are in, well, this is the Yugoslavian Championship in 1952. Of course, Yugoslavia, as I recall, this doesn't even exist anymore. It long since broke up into its constituent parts, if you like. But yeah, back in 1952 in Belgrade, and we have Fudera against Matanovic. I think the name Matanovic rings a bell. I think he might be quite a well-known master player from that era, but of course he's playing black here and gets beaten. So let's see how it goes. E4, D6, D4, knight F6, knight C3, G6, bishop to E3, knight B to D7, queen to D2, and this time a different idea from black, a very early C5. So striking at the white center from the side. Oops, excuse me. Which is an idea. Computer not thinking a lot of it, but it is an idea. F3 from white, just carrying on with the plan. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and pretty level. Actually pretty level. Slight advantage to white maybe, but pretty level. Bishop G7 from black. Castles from white. Queenside, same theme again. We're seeing that a lot in these games. Castles kingside from black. And here comes H4. Here comes the pawn storm. Queen C7 from black, G4 from white. This idea kind of plays itself, doesn't it? Just throwing the pawns at the opposite castle king. Knight to B6 is played. H5. Interesting that black didn't play H5 themselves, by the way. Just always worth remembering that as an idea. Rook to D8 from black, and the bar has crept up now to +3. We can see black is in some trouble. H takes, F takes, and white's really succeeded. Their plan looks good because this is open. And now Dr. Dave writes, white has an idea. Okay, that's all he writes. Then E5, D takes E5, and now what on earth is so good in this position that it can suddenly be +4? So if you want to try and find white's next move, again, hit pause, and I will carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And the slightly surprising answer is bishop takes b6. Now, what's going on here? Well, if rook takes queen, bishop takes queen, and you've just won a piece. So that's looking pretty good. No, I'll put the lines on. Actually, there's quite a lot going on here. Yeah, so clearly that's good news. White is just a piece up. So, okay. If queen takes bishop, then queen takes rook is just winning because there's extra attackers on the rook than there are defenders. So no good. Yeah, what are you going to do as black in this position? There's really nothing going on. If you play pawn takes, you run into the same thing. Queen takes, rook takes. And yeah, ouch. Ouch indeed. After e5, by the way, in this position, black is already in some trouble. Sorry, I meant to go back a couple more places there. Yeah, after h4, let's just see. I think the computer will say black should play h5. Yes, so in this position, black should automatically play h5 and try to block the pawn storm. Still a slight advantage to white there, but the game goes on. So, okay, that's the end of our quick look through the Pirc Modern. We've got one more opening to look at from the white point of view. And then it will be time for us to switch to opening from the black point of view. And the next one we're going to look at is what Dr. Dave recommends against the French defense, which is this. So be ready for that in the next video. Thanks for watching.